Welcome to the Courtship Aftershow, a talk show on the Reader Seeks Romance channel that recaps and discusses former NBC, current USA Network, dating reality show The Courtship, inspired by the work of Jane Austen. I am Liz Donatelli, and my co-host is my good friend and reality TV superfan, Tiffany Current. Today, Tiffany and I chat about episode 10 of The Courtship titled Carousel of Events. Then we interview psychic NICOLE KELLEHER, the tea leaf reader from that episode. Enjoy. Are you ready to dig into episode 10 titled Carousel of Events?
Yes, I am. And I wish there were actually events that happened, but there weren't. But that's fine. We can dive in.
You know, it makes sense, carousel, because we go around and round, and honestly,
Yes.
we keep going in circles with this show.
That's true. That is very true. The same patterns keep happening, and no one wants to jump off. It's like you got to stop the ride. You got to stop the ride.
Yeah.
You got to change your point of view.
Yeah, and Miss Rémy is riding the Lincoln Chapman carousel, and she's not jumping off.
She's not jumping off. He's jumping off. And she's going to be riding by herself very soon.
He's ready to jump off. Yeah. So the episode doesn't really waste any time into getting into the pleasure garden, which is their event. And the pleasure garden seems to last quite a while, in my opinion.
Can I just say something before we jump into the pleasure garden? As we started out the show, they cut to the Rémy court all together at the palace. And Miss Rémy was going around saying, can each person talk to the suitors? And she asked her dad to speak to Mr. Boccicchio, and Mr. Rémy rolled his eyes. Did you catch that? He rolled his eyes. He's like, again.
Wait a second.
He rolled his eyes.
Oh, I don't recall. Wow. Yeah. Well, Mr. Rémy did not start out liking Mr. Boccicchio.
He didn't.
In this episode. But by the end, I feel like they mended fences.
They mended fences because they had a good chat later, which we'll talk about. But what I thought was interesting is that Miss Rémy asked each member of her court to talk to someone except to talk to Mr. Chapman. She said, talk to all the suitors, but no one was assigned to talk to Mr. Chapman. Did you notice that?
I didn't. I thought I had in my mind paired up everybody and thought everyone was covered.
Nope. It was Mr. Nazaire and the sisters, Mr. Cones and the mom, Mr. Boccicchio and the dad, Mr. Judge. Was it Mr. Judge and Tessa? Somebody else talked to Mr. Judge. I can't remember, but we never saw anyone of the family talk to Mr. Chapman.
Well, I don't think, you know what? Tessa didn't talk to anybody.
Oh, maybe not.
So why didn't they have her talk to Chapman?
I don't know. Very suspicious.
Why are they trying to silence Miss Cleary? I don't understand. They just keep giving that woman alcohol. So they keep giving her champagne, and they're like, just don't say anything. So the pleasure garden, everyone enters into it with their mission, and Mrs. Rémy was ecstatic to chat with Mr. Cones.
Mr. Cones.
Like, I wanted to talk to Mr. Cones. And her first question was, do you want kids? And Cones, handled it with humor, as always. But he said, yeah, I'm totally down for kids. Very solid guy, delivered on the entertainment factor, which is all we could hope for in that segment. Then we had, what was it? Judge and Mrs. Baker, Nicole's sister.
I can't remember who talked to Mr. Judge.
No, I'm sorry. Honest. It was Nazaire and Mrs. Baker.
Yeah.
And listen, I don't know. This guy.
Why are we wasting our time? She's like, would you want to be in a relationship? Maybe if the girl's right and I haven't been in a relationship. I forgot he said how many years. It's been a couple of years since he's been in a relationship.
He said since he was 19. He's got to be way older than 19. So I'm thinking, what, 10? Well, maybe 5 years?
I don't know, but it's a long time to not do that. But then later on, we do get to see Mr. Boccicchio and Mr. Rémy have a chat together. And then at first it's a little slow, but then I think Mr. Rémy asked him again, do you see yourself settling down with Miss Rémy? And Mr. Boccicchio said a solid yes, I do.
He did.
And I think that's what Mr. Rémy was waiting for. And then eventually he said, I think Mr. Boccicchio said that his best friend is his brother. Yeah. And then right when he said that, Mr. Rémy lit up like, my best friend is my brother too.
Right. They found common ground.
Really nice, it was really cute. They finally had a connection. So I appreciated that. Good He's finally on a good page with him. That's fantastic.
We can move on. Yeah.
We can move on. And then I'll say the interesting thing that happened with the carnival is they brought in a psychic to kind of read the tea leaves of each person's, I don't know, future with Miss Rémy.
Right.
And my favorite reading was just reading with Mr. Judge, because I think she basically said to Mr. Judge, he's a good catch.
Yeah.
And he's honest, and you guys would work well together. And what I loved is that Mr. Judge was so excited. Like his expression of hearing that was like, oh, how sweet. Like he was so excited by that reading. And I kind of fell for Mr. Judge in that moment. I was like, oh, he's so cute.
Well, absolutely. He was so genuinely thrilled to hear that, you know, hey, look, there's proof here. You know, look, I am a good catch. This person can read me accurately. And, you know, oh yeah, it was like an endorsement. And I've always been a fan of Judge. So I was glad that he received that validation. Whether or not one believes in psychic abilities, it was a good moment of validation for him. And a quick, going back a little bit, he met with Dom, Nicole's brother.
Oh, yes, you're right. It was Dom. You're correct.
Dom mentioned race, saying, you know, I'm not sure if exactly what he had asked, but he said, you know, how would you be able to deal with the fact that this would be an interracial relationship and, you know, et cetera. And, you know, interestingly, Mr. Judge was like, I never thought of that. And I've not been in that situation, but I am willing to learn and find out, you know, educate myself on how best to handle things. And he had a really good answer.
He's a great catch. I will just say, like, I don't know what's going on with Ms. Rémy. She has obviously her eyes elsewhere, but this guy, as I've gotten to know him throughout the show, he's a really good catch. He's so genuine, so sweet. He's very attractive. Attraction aside, he just seems like a really solid guy. I really like him. He's won me over.
Yeah, absolutely. And we learn later on that while we say he's a good catch, Miss Rémy refers to him as, you know, the safe, secure bet.
Safe bet.
So that we will address later.
Yep.
So who else has a reading? Cones has a reading. Actually, all of them, I believe.
They all had a reading. I think for Mr. Cone, she more or less said something along the lines of like, even though on paper you're so different, because he makes you laugh and he's the only one that does that, that's why you're a good match. And that's true. Like he's the main guy and he makes all of us laugh. Every single episode he says something, you know, he's very funny. He was just having a good time and he just seems like a good person to be around. I like Mr. Cones.
Yeah. And I feel like he brings out in Miss Rémy something that's so joyful and so it feels real. Like it feels like she experiences real joy in his presence.
Yes.
You know, which is all you can ask for really, to find a partner. But I sadly don't feel like Cones is going to get out of that friend zone in Rémy's mind. Like, also, Nazir did a reading. Well, apparently when the psychic, Nicola showed a cup with no tea leaves in it. She's like, oh, it's empty. I was like, oh, this is where she says Nazir is full of it and he's got nothing to give you. But that wasn't the interpretation of the reading. It was that he has a lot of love to give. And that they should really date and get to know each other better. I don't know how I feel about that. He might have love to give, but I think it's to himself because I think he loves himself.
And that's fine. He does seem like he loves himself and good for him. And I think he should enjoy that life and move on for the next show. That's what I think.
Move on to the next show. Yeah. Yeah.
The next reality show. Let's give a next reality show.
I
think Mr. Bokikio does a reading and I think it's more or less what I liked about Mr. Bokikio. He's like such a New Yorker to me. Like right when he heard that there's like a psychic, he's just like, come on. Why are we really a psychic? He's like, oh, I'll listen to her. But the reading was kind of on the nose of where he's standoffish. He has to, you know, express his feelings more, something along those lines.
Nicola, the psychic, says to Bokikio that you have to let go of the past because it's kind of preventing you from moving forward. And I was wondering if the past she referred to was what he mentioned with his his dad. I think his dad having passed away, and
that's interesting. The family relationship, the
looking
marriage.
at his parents as a model for his relationship, or maybe there is some kind of romantic relationship he was involved in that has scarred him in some way. But Kikyo seemed to think that it was an accurate reading, so I don't know if something will come out about that. Chapman reading, do you recall exactly how that went? I'm trying to remember.
I don't even remember. I gotta be honest with you. This episode, when they kept going to Mr. Chapman, although he's very attractive, I think I just zoned out in her reading, because whatever she was gonna say, Miss Rémy would take it as, he's the man for me. He's the perfect match. So whatever the psychic said, I was like, whatever, man. Miss Rémy's gonna take it her own way. Yeah. And that's going to be that.
Oh, wait a second. She did mention something interesting. So Nicola the psychic says to Chapman about having half a heart or giving Rémy half a heart. She said something is missing.
Yes.
So, I mean, yes, because half maybe he's giving to her in lust, and the love part is his lifestyle, his van life that he doesn't.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I like that. That's actually a good good takeaway.
But for some reason, Miss Rémy thought it was an encouraging reading. I didn't understand her interpretation.
He's like, I'm the other half of that heart. Together we make a whole. It's like, no, girl, no, sweetie, you gotta get out of this. I don't know what else we could tell you. Like, this is not going to work.
It was a weird interpretation. So listen, she is just, you cannot talk to Miss Rémy right now.
We can't talk to her. Yeah. The entire episode, like much like the end of the last episode, I was shaking my head. I will say the one part that I was cracking up at, which was a nice takeaway for the episode, Mr. Nazaire, this episode was having the time of his life. Yeah. He was drinking up a storm. He was like, he was like dancing. He was just drinking. They keep cutting to him, and he was like getting very tipsy. He went to interrupt Mr. Bokikyo, Miss Rémy dancing, and he's just and then he kind of danced away.
Yes, because Mr. Bokikyo was like, "Hey, F off," and then he was "Okay, let me go." Yeah, listen. The one I have to say, this was a side of Nazaire during this pleasure garden that I did appreciate. He was wielding his walking stick, getting he seemed actually quite, innocent. Maybe that was more of his true self. I don't know. He didn't seem like he was putting on airs necessarily. Yes. He was kind of having fun, except whenever he talks to someone about Miss Rémy, then he puts on his, I would,
This is my favorite moment for him. I was like, this is his real self, and his real self I like a lot. His real self was very entertaining. I was like, he is fun.
He would be someone I would be like, let's hang out with Miles Nazaire at the party because he's a good time guy.
He's a blast.
But I think he's got a lot of barriers and deep-seated issues that probably need to be worked out because he's all about that facade.
He's playing the role. I mean, that's his job. He's a socialite, so he knows how to play the game. I mean, that's just what he does. But the relaxed Mr. Nazaire, I like. So at one point,
yes,
Miss Rémy and Mr. Chapman get on the carousel together.
That carousel ride, first of all, it made me nauseous. I get dizzy from that, but it was the longest carousel ride and the most cringy that I've ever.
It was the most ridiculous thing in the world. She basically says I'm so happy you're here. I thought that what I wanted was marriage and kids and this and that. And she's like, but I realized all I want is someone who looks at me the way you do now. Cut to Mr. Chapman's face, looking terrified. Oh, no. When she said that and they cut to his face, and he looked so terrified. Yeah. I was like, girl, no.
Yeah. See, now you took that as terrified. I thought he was leaning into the look that she stated does it for her.
Oh, I was terrified.
I was like, oh, he's just trying to play it cool. Yeah, that's right. You like that look and I'm going to give it to you. So it's interesting. Now, what you're saying is probably true, though. Maybe he was trying to cover his
terrified feelings of well, she's really into me. We gotta step back from this.
Yeah, but it's funny, how I felt like that was kind of duplicitous of her to tell him that when all she's doing is pushing Bokikyo for marriage. And now she's like, oh, but with you, it's different. She's got different rules for each different suitor. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, you feel upset about it. I felt upset about it.
Yeah, I do.
This whole episode, I felt like really frustrated with her because I was like, Danny B is amazing. He's amazing. Mr. Combs is amazing. Mr. Judge, don't get me started. He's also amazing. Mr. Nazaire, you can do what you wish with him. But Mr. Chapman, although he's attractive, he has certain needs. He has a certain lifestyle that he wants to lead. And it's not what she wants. She's completely changing, in my opinion, what she wants and needs for this individual, for this feeling that she gets for him. And it was incredibly uncomfortable and incredibly frustrating to watch. It's like watching your girlfriend be with somebody who she's really into and being like, he's the worst match for you, but you have to be a good friend and not say anything. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, I agree. We've all had that friend who's like dating some guy who's just not good for them. And then eventually you just kind of mentally make a break with that friend because you're like, I can't get dragged in. I have, after this carousel ride, I am mentally untethered untethered from Miss Rémy because she's on her own now.
Boop. Good luck. She's flying out in space. We're going back to Earth, girl.
Yeah.
Good luck out there.
That's it. Now, I would like to address the Carousel Kiss. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
They did a Carousel Kiss that, is very kind of deep. How do you feel about kissing on a carousel? First of all, that to me wasn't sexy. Carousels to me are fun, family fun. Yes. So I didn't find it sexy. They're rotating. They're like getting deep in it. And I'm like, I don't know. I wasn't into the Carousel Kiss.
I wasn't into it. I think I wasn't into it more because of me watching this train wreck of a situation.
Yeah, that too.
It's like they're in the middle of the situation. They're going through the wreckage and they're making out. And I'm like, no, get out, escape.
Yeah.
But more specifically about the ride in general, I felt nauseous.
I did.
It's going around in a circle.
I did.
I was like, aren't you feeling sick?
Yeah. I mean, they could have stopped the carousel.
They could have stopped the carousel. That's true.
I mean, I don't understand. It's not like they were at some public park and they couldn't tell them to shut up. Like, this is a private pleasure garden. Stop the carousel so we can kiss. Was it also at that time where Chapman reiterated, I'm still trying to figure out if this is lust or love? Because that was my note. And I don't know if that was just me thinking about.
I don't know if he specifically said to her lust or love, but he did say, as long as you have the patience to let me figure things out.
That's it. Yes. The patience. And she's
as long as you have the patience. And she said, I have patience for anybody that I care about. And it's like,
well, then where's the patience for Bokikio? Where was the patience for some of the other suitors you claimed you cared about?
I have patience for days, but just for you. Just for you. And it's because of his beautiful curls and his crystal blue eyes. So the morning after the pleasure garden, there is a discussion between Nicole and all of her family members, kind of chatting about their experiences with each suitor. And Nicole mentions that she feels like her relationship with Mr. Chapman has progressed. And I'm like, good Lord. I feel like we're watching a movie. It's like a horror movie where you're shouting at the screen, where a girl is walking upstairs and there's a guy with an axe behind the doors. No, don't go in there, don't go in there. Like every single time she talks, she's like, stop. That's what it feels like. Whenever she talks about him, I'm literally like watching, like she's getting ready to be taken. Like what's happening here? That's what I feel like every single time she talks about him now. Miss Rémy goes on an apple picking date with Mr. Judge. And I was like, oh.
This is where Miss Rémy admits to having fallen in love once before.
Yes.
And I'm assuming this was her ex-boyfriend, the one that's mentioned at the start of the series. Mm-hmm. So she kind of opened up a little bit, which I like that Judge was asking her questions.
Yes.
Because we haven't been getting a whole lot of asking her. And I forgot what the issue was about. Like she fell in love, but then the guy
she fell in love, and then he moved across the country, and he didn't ask her to go with.
Right.
Once again, someone is leaving her to go do something and not asking her to come with. I see a pattern with her in relationships. I'm just saying there was a pattern with people going off away from her, and she's saying he didn't take me with. But that's why specifically that didn't work out. And then she asked him about being in love, and he basically told this really nice story of a girl driving a long distance, I think, to give him food. And he said that he really enjoys these acts of service. Like that is his love language. He keeps mentioning these acts of service. And I'm like, Mr. Judge, you're so cute. He knows himself. I like a man that knows himself. And it's very sweet. And then they kiss and she says, his lips are like butter.
Yes.
And I was like, I bet they are.
I know. Oh, butter.
Put it on some toast and I will definitely eat it because he is very attractive to me right now.
I'm the toast and you're the butter. Spread your butter all over my toast.
Ooh, spread it, baby. Spread it all over my toast.
And I have to be honest, like I felt like that was such a movie moment where he's kissing her while holding an apple and then he just like tosses the apple.
They kissed and it started becoming more intimate and then he dropped it and I was like, Mr. Judge.
Yeah, no, he's got a place in my heart. Next, we have the Nazir and Rémy chat.
Miss Rémy and Miss Nazir, they have a date where she basically said, you know, can you commit? What do you see our relationship looking like since you live in I guess in London, I live here. Yeah. And he more or less said that with the way that his work works, like he couldn't see that necessarily happening. She would have to probably do more for him than he for her.
Yeah.
And that bothered her.
Yeah.
For some reason, Mr. Nazir saying I can't really commit bothered her.
Yes.
And yet Mr. Chapman saying like, I still have to figure things out does not bother her.
Correct.
Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Then we cut to Combs, Chapman, and Danny B.
Yes. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, back at the parlor.
Chapman straight up is like, yeah, the ideal relationship for me is light and casual. And I don't want to live with anybody. I could hardly live with you guys.
That was of note. He said his ideal is basically having a relationship and him going to visit the person and seeing them every once in a while. Right. Maybe they'll come stay in the van. Most likely not. But basically him going to see the person, getting a booty call, and then him going off in his van life and doing his own thing.
I have nothing against that lifestyle, but he has no place taking up time with her. Like Cone says, listen, he's taking up valuable time that we could be spending with her. We are more aligned with what she wants as far as a relationship. But here's the thing. They don't know what she said to Cones at the carousel, which is, true. I just want someone who looks at me the way you do. And I guess, go anywhere with you.
What I did like about that discussion is that both Cones and Bokikio got to discuss what they see their lifestyle with Miss Rémy. And I liked how they each shared a moment. Mr. Bokikio said that he would, he could see them in the future, going to a basketball game and then seeing, Miss Baker across the way, giving a stink eye to him, which I thought was really cute.
That was funny. Yeah.
And then Mr. Cohen says, I can see us eating corn dogs and celebrating our anniversary.
Yeah.
I liked how the two of them were sharing these really sweet, ideal moments in the future. That was really cute. And meanwhile, Mr. Chapman says, my ideal situation is living in my van.
Yeah.
Alone without you.
Yeah.
That's fine.
He's a complex character. He would be a good romance protagonist in a novel where he starts out like that. And then his arc is that, he gets through some of his issues, breaks down some walls. And it's like, yeah, I would like you to live in the van with me as opposed to you just visiting every now and again.
Because Mr. Combs is very respectful. He said, if I was a person that had this wanderlust lifestyle, I would want my significant other to come with me.
Yes.
And that seems to each his own. That was good for us as viewers because then we could finally hear the ideal for each person, and Mr. Chapman just wants something different.
Right.
And that's fine. And that takes us to the final ball. Yeah.
So the farewell dance, it's two suitors were chosen for the dance card, Nazir and Judge. And Judge, they cut to him like he was so confused as to why he was even selected because they had such a successful day.
A great date. She goes on to dance with Mr. Judge. And she basically says to him, like, I've dated the guy who was safe, who's a safe bet, but it wasn't fulfilling. I was like, that is so cold, Miss Rémy.
Yeah,
because she was harsh. Basically calling Mr. Judge her safe bet and saying that it wasn't fulfilling. And I was like, I am happy to end up with a safe bet like Mr. Judge because he's amazing.
Yeah,
he's amazing.
He is amazing. Yeah, and she doesn't even know the depth of what other surprises that he might have that would attract her.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. What I didn't like is that the message she's sending out is that nice guys don't get the girl.
It's crazy. Dances with Mr. Nazaire. I'm not sure what they talked about, to be perfectly honest. I'm thinking he's going home. And basically he did end up going home, but he did wish her well, which is very nice.
Yeah, he's classy.
And kind of went out on his way. And that's how the ball ended, with Mr. Nazaire walking off. And then we're left with the final four. And I thought that was the end. It was not the end. And just a quick backtrack is that, according to my notes, Miss Rémy said to Mr. Nazaire, our lifestyles won't work together. Which is rich, coming from someone that's fallen for this guy in a van who doesn't want anything but lust, apparently. It's killing me.
So how hard did your eyes roll at the end of this episode?
I legit thought this was the end of the show, and then cut to her in her bedroom, and I was like, they better not. Better not.
When you heard okay, so they cut to Miss Rémy in her Regency nightgown, snuggling into bed, and you hear a knock on the door. Who did you think it was?
You know what? I honestly did not think it was Mr. Chapman, to be perfectly honest. Okay. I didn't. Did you think it was Mr. Chapman?
Here's the thing. I didn't want it to be Chapman, but I said, I think it is Chapman, but I was thinking it might be Bokekia. I was hoping it was Bokekia.
I was hoping it'd be somebody else. And then when Mr. Chapman opened the door, I was like, all I could do was shake my head again. Like, no.
But you know what I thought for a split second? That he was going to take himself out of the race.
I thought he was going to have a talk about, you know what, I've been struggling with this love or lust thing. By the way, if you're struggling with love or lust, it is always lust. It is always lust if you are struggling. Okay. Always lust. Yeah. But I thought he was going to say that I've been struggling with this love or lust, and I just don't think that we are going to get there. Yeah. Use the same word she's been using on other suitors. And he was going to leave. But that did not happen, Liz. What happened? What
happened is that he took off taken off his clothes and got into bed with her and snuggled up, and they were chatting, about, oh, I'm so glad you're here.
To make out. And she says, and this is when I really rolled my eyes. No offense, Miss Rémy. A connection like this only happens once in a lifetime. Legit, my eyes went so far back in my head that I fell over, because I was like, this is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard.
Yeah. And then he just like takes the blanket and puts it over them, and it's like, oh, fade to black. Yeah. When she said that, I was like, I gave up. I gave up on her.
Oh no.
I gave up on her. Whatever happens, it's out of my hands. Yeah.
You know what? When somebody tells you so many times who they are, you need to believe them. He's told you so many times who he is. And at this point, it's on her. It is on her. Like when she said that, legit, I the same thing. I'm like, I'm done.
I want someone to ask her to unpack all of her feelings. What is it that you feel is so unique about your connection? How do you define connection? How do you see your life? Like, can you work remotely? Are you okay living without an actual address and you just have a PO box? Like I want someone to really ask her, do you feel like maybe your lust is being confused for love, Miss Rémy? Nobody's asking her the hard-hitting questions.
That is true.
Hi, Nicola. It's lovely to have you join us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
We're excited.
We're super excited. Can you tell us a little bit about the psychic work that you do?
I first realized that I was psychic. Well, I guess I knew something was happening when I was a child, and I would go to bed. I could never really sleep before 3-4 o'clock in the morning. And I'd be up and I would hear my name being called over and over by what sounded like different people. And so it's like, Nicola, Nicola, Nicola. And I was like, oh, and it was really scary. And I didn't want to tell anyone. I thought, what if I've got a mental illness and I can't tell anyone about it? So I just never said anything. And the way I would stop it was just to tell them to shut up, like shut up already, and it would stop. So then I started sleeping with earplugs in, and it kind of seemed to go away. And I always wanted to be two things: an actress or a witch.
Wow.
Some people are both. That's very exciting.
And I became both, which is great. But there wasn't any jobs for witches, of course, or psychics at that point. in the 80s. So I just went to drama school, went down that route. But I ended up finding myself on a psychic channel on Sky as a presenter. And all of the psychics there, some were kind of real, some weren't. They were just more good for TV. But the ones that were real said, you know, you've got this gift. And I said, I know. And I'd known about it for years. I used to find things that people had lost in the house. I would predict things for my parents. They'd say, hey, what job am I going to get? And I'd look at their palm and I'd tell them, and then it would happen. So there was all that going on. And then when I got to my sort of late teens, early 20s, I kind of pushed it to one side. It wasn't cool to be the weird kid. So I left it there. But when I started on this psychic channel and I began to meet real mentors, people that actually had a gift, they showed me how to do it. And the rest is kind of history. I started reading for friends, and then I started to get paid for readings, and then I started to get booked for events and TV shows and things like that. I've written a book and I'm on book 2 already, which is due out soon. So it's been a bit of a journey that I couldn't really avoid, I guess.
So palm reading, tea leaf reading, you have clairvoyant abilities. You can find your missing keys or missing phone, which must be fantastic.
I know, like I don't have to search. I know exactly where it is.
Every day I play the game, where's my phone? And I look all over the house. So that must be very helpful. Do you also have mediumship abilities as far as talking to those who've crossed over to the other side?
Well, yeah, I mean, thanks for asking, because it's an interesting subject, because there's a theory that if you're one, you're not the other. So if you're a clairvoyant, you can see into the future, but you can't speak to the dead, and vice versa. So I went along on this journey thinking that. So I'd say, look, I could do your love reading, or I could do, but I can't talk to dead people. And then what would happen as I started to lay the cards and we started to talk was I'd pick up a name of someone that had passed away. Oh, wow. And somebody would start crying in front of me. And I'm like, oh, is that someone that you know? And we and as we dug a little bit more, we found out about how they died and what they went through. So I am a little bit of both, but my strongest skill is clairvoyance, which is making predictions and seeing in the future. I've got my teacup behind me, my crystal ball cards. Really, it doesn't matter what I look into, the same messages will come through. It's just a way of focusing your mind on something.
Right. Now, is that the actual teacup and a crystal ball that you brought with you to the courtship?
Well, actually, this is my crystal ball that was on the table, but this cup is a Regency style, so it's kind of more 70s. So I wasn't allowed to use it.
Very nice, though.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
That's very nice. So I have a question, and this is kind of a silly one, because you have your book behind you. I think you said it's called Practical Magic. There was also a movie called Practical Magic about witches with Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman.
Yes.
I'm assuming you've seen it before. If you
I have seen it a lot.
It's a fantastic movie. If you had to pick which one you're closer to, would you say it's Sandra Bullock or Nicole Kidman's character?
Oh, you know what? I'd love to say it was Nicole Kidman's character, but I'm far too sensible. So it would definitely be Sandra Bullock's character.
I like that.
I haven't seen the movie.
It's a fantastic movie, Liz. It's a fantastic
Okay, I'll watch it.
They're two sisters. They're witches. They come together. They do talk to the dead in that movie as well.
Okay.
So you should see it.
As far as the tea leaf readings that you did on the courtship for the cast, how does tea leaf reading work? Is it almost like tarot cards where the way the tea leaves fall, oh, this means that, or is it more a way of you focusing and allowing your psychic abilities to come through?
Well, it's actually a little bit of both, and everybody will work differently. So you can learn how to read the shapes of a cup in tea leaves. Anyone can do that. But so I do that. But also, if you look into this cup now, there's nothing inside of it. But I'm looking right at the bottom and I'm not focusing on anything else. I'm just focusing on the bottom. So it's a bit like looking in the crystal ball. So I use both things, and it's what sticks out to me the most. So for miles, I think it was, we didn't have anything in the cup. So
it was empty.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. Yeah.
So it's a bit of both. You can see shapes. Also, the handle usually tells you that that's January. So as we move around, we're looking at predictions for February, March, April.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it has to really have a handle. So there's certain things that will mean things. So at the bottom of the cup, that's relationships. And as we go up, it's friendships, family, and work. But everyone reads differently. Everyone has their own way of doing it.
Oh, wow.
I have a question. So when you were brought into the courtship, did you suggest doing reading of the tea leaves, or did you suggest the crystal ball, or did the producers say do this or that? How did that work?
So because the show was a Regency based show, they were looking for someone who could read the tea leaves, and how they found me. So I brought my crystal ball along as well. But I think at the time, it was mostly tea leaves in Regency period. I don't think they had crystal balls back then. So we were kind of trying to keep it in the period. So.
And they found you, or did you hear about the show and then like submit an application or have an agent reach out? Like how did you actually come to get the gig of reading the tea leaves on the show?
Sure. Well, I've got a lovely agent called Claire at Spiritual Events, and she often phones me up and says, hey, this is really weird. Do you want to do this? Or we've got a psychic party in London. Do you want to do it? And because she knows my background, I'm a trained actor, presenter. She often asks me first if there's anything that comes up for TV, which I'm really grateful for. Thank you, Claire. But it was right slap bang in the middle of COVID. It was all kind of very secretive. I didn't know what I was doing until they were sat in front of me, and I had no about the show at all.
Wow. Okay. Because that was my next question, is what did you know once you got there? But it sounds like nothing. You knew nothing.
Well, I mean, I knew that it was a Regency, so I knew as much as was out in the press at that time. So there was a casting called Suitors, and I kind of looked at that and thought, please tell me what this is all about. And I kept asking, am I allowed to know? And they said, no, it's all got to be secret. But for me, that was better, because I don't like to know something about someone before I read for them. So I was fine with that. But I was in quarantine for 7 days, actually turned out 10. And then I was allowed into the courtship bubble to see everything. I only knew that I was going to Castle Howard when I was on a bus there, and I only knew who the people were when I was with them. I didn't recognize Miles from English television, but the staircase that you can see, I had been dreaming about that staircase for 3 years. And then that's crazy. And I was like, and I said to someone, this is the staircase, I've been dreaming about it for 3 years. And they said, really? And I said, yeah, but I go in my dream to the top of the stairs and all the rooms to the side are burned. And they said, but do you know about the fire? And I said, no, I don't know anything about the fire. And they said, there was a fire here. I don't know when it was. And the rooms to the side of the top of the staircase are burned.
I just got chills.
That's crazy.
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow.
Now I was like, good, I know what it means.
Yeah. So it was meant to be. So when you sat down in front of them, had you never actually talked to any of the guys before? That was the very first time?
No, yeah. I mean, all I saw originally was a photograph of them just very quickly. And they said, this is who you're seeing, by the way. And I was like, oh, let me kind of tune in. And that was it. They just told me their names literally 5 minutes before. And then I met Nicole and I can't remember who was first, but yeah, I didn't know anything about them at all.
Were there any readings that you did that didn't make it to air? Like, did you read like her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rémy? Like, did you do like
the
just
sister
everyone?
Tessa?
There was a lot, and I mean, I'm so grateful, because I think that they've been really kind to my job on the show and been really they portrayed me. But there was a lot that didn't get in that I wish had, but I think it would ruin the story if we kind of I will leave you with the intrigue. But I did read for Tess as well, just before. Yeah, I read.
Did you say that she'd meet a stranger named Mr. Mumbrae by any chance? Because we think that they have a connection. Ooh. That's the vibe that we were feeling from them, but
well, it won't be Mr. Safa, will it?
That's very true. Sure. You're clearly a fan of the show now, since you know that. Yes.
I can't remember, and also all readings are confidential, but I say this, by the end of the evening, everybody was very, very drunk apart from me.
That's fair.
Champagne was flowing that night.
Were there any suitors who sat down and their vibe was just like, I'm not into this, and it kind of interferes with your process and with your reading and interpretation?
I think most of them were open. I think that Miles was at first, I think I kind of put him in his place, because he put one leg up on the chair and was being all silly.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
He needed to break out. So he was like, oh, fine. But, he enjoyed it. And I think that Mr. Pakikio was a little closed off.
Yes.
But connection between Nicole and Lincoln I didn't need the teacup for that. And I didn't know it happened until I was there. And I was like, the sexual magnetism was just all over the cast.
We can feel it through the TV screen between them. So it must have been knocked over in person.
Yeah.
So when you were doing the reading, I think now that the show's aired, at the end of the episode, I think it was Mr. Nazaire that was, I think he was asked to go home in his carriage. Based upon your readings, do you think that was the right decision on her behalf, or do you think she should have kept somebody else instead?
No, absolutely. I mean, without, kind of giving away Nicole's reading, because it's obviously very confidential, I think that for me at that time, I felt like he was the least invested in her. And I didn't know that he had joined the cast recently, because I didn't see that until the show aired. But I think that it's a lovely friendship between the two of them, and I think that they should stay in contact. But I don't think he was there for love.
Yeah, that's what we said. And that's why that's why I felt validated when at first you said, "Oh, there's no tea leaves in here. It's empty." I was like, "You see, it's because he's got nothing to give." But you had a nicer interpretation than what I was thinking. Everything you said seemed pretty accurate as far as what we had learned up to that point about the suitors individually and their relationship with Miss Rémy. Now, Tiffany and I were discussing the half a heart for the Chapman reading. There was the mention of the half a heart, and we took that as, not very encouraging, but Nicole took it as, that's good
I'm
news.
The other half of your heart. We make a whole heart together, and you're like, that's not how it works.
Could it be interpreted either way, for good or bad? Because we thought, he only has half of a heart to give you. He's not in it totally. But I don't know you could take it either way. I mean,
it's difficult because I'm reading for someone that I've never met and receiving images that I have to decipher. So it's a bit like somebody passing me, feeling around in a box and me having to tell the person what I feel. So the half a heart, I felt, was kind of a good thing, because it looked like she could build on that. Because nobody meets and is in love straight away and then off they go and everything's perfect. So I think in a good relationship, there's room for improvement. So that was the way I portrayed it. I think at the time. But I did also say to Nicole that I wasn't sure about Lincoln, but there was they really fancy each other,
they do. They have a vibe.
They do have a vibe.
They have a serious lust vibe. I think we just discussed before, Liz and I, that Mr. Judge probably had the best reading that we thought. That you said he was a good catch and he was honest. When even before he started doing his reading, when he sat down, did you get that same vibe about him? Like when somebody sits, do you automatically start sensing this is what they're about? This is their future?
I think so. With Mr. Judge, he was the most excited about me being there. Like when he came, oh my God, my mum loves this. And he was really invested. That's great for me, because that means that someone is saying, come and read me. I'm open. Whereas Mr. Bakikio was like, I don't believe in any of this mumbo jumbo. No, I didn't know he said that until recently.
That's right. Yeah.
He was a little close, and it's harder to get in. It doesn't mean you can't get in and read them. It just means that it's a little trickier, which is why I was two-way street. Forget what's going on. Just think about your brain. But I did get a really good vibe with him. I just can't remember now who I thought was the best one. She has a really tough job, is all I'm going to say. I don't know who she's going to pick, because she's actually whittled it down to, I would say, the best.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
And in there now, really, apart from Miles, but he's gone. Who wasn't there or isn't there for her, regardless of what Lincoln may or may not be able to offer her. I think their feelings are genuine, and that's hard for her. I would love her. I mean, if we could get Lincoln and shake him up a bit, brilliant. But I don't think he's right for her. I would like to see Mr. Cones or Mr.
or Mr. Judge.
Okay.
But then I just look at Danny, and he's such like a rabbit in headlights every time someone kisses her. He genuinely really does love her, and I love the fact he's not committing to saying how much he loves her, because he feels he has to feel it, which is exactly right. You can't say it and not mean it. You have to say it because you feel it. And so I don't know.
He's a gentleman. He's a gentleman. He's waiting until he actually feels it, as opposed to leading her on, unlike other people on the show. But that's that.
What do you have coming up? Do you think that you will be doing more appearances in a psychic capacity on reality shows?
Well, I hope to be appearing on some more reality shows. I have got a little idea of my own, so I might put that in the pipeline.
Ooh.
But ultimately, the deadline for my new book, which is called Grave Concerns, is very soon. It's the end of June, and I've got a lot to finish. So I have to finish my book first. That will be launching. We're hoping to launch that on Halloween, because it's about death and graves and stuff.
I like that. That's nice.
I've just been doing some private readings, private parties, some great corporate events and festivals in London, and I'm a mum too. So
so you're busy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nicola, for joining us here on the Courtship After Show. You are a delight.
Well, thank you very much. It's been so lovely. Thank you.
Now we will, in true Miss Rémy fashion, bid you farewell.
Farewell.
Your
carriage
awaits.